Okay, I'm just getting the laptop ready to monitor the live stream while I'm flying, so I can respond to any comments that come up along the way. Okay, clear the desk. Anything I don't need. So just going to leave it a couple of minutes before I get going. So we are at Swansea Airport for takeoff. This is Swansea, the Pilot Plus, oh no, Boundless, sorry, scenery for Swansea. No, Pilot Plus, I'll get it right in the end. Hi William. Right, I'm just going to nip away for a moment. I'll be back in a minute and then we'll get the flight underway. Oh, I did say to everybody I would be on the West Europe server. Resume. And I will go and run transmitter as well, just so everybody can see me on little nav map if they wish to. Call sign. I'll just be myself today, and I'm on the West Europe server, aren't I? And I could go and flight plan, copy, flight plan description, okay. That's not it. Flight plan, copy flight to the clipboard, there we go. And let's paste it. Oh, let's go say we are doing instrument flight, but we're only going to fly at about 2,500 feet most of the way. Copy the route to the clipboard, paste it in there for anybody that's interested. Connect. And minimize that. Minimize that. Okay, I'm just going to nip away. I'll be back in a moment. Right. Shall we get this show on the road then? So before we do anything, go to general options and go and turn off the tooltips because they're annoying. Apply, go back, resume. Okay, let's have a look around the Caribou and see how we get things going. So first thing on our list of things to do is go and turn the magnetos on. So they're overhead, so turn them to both. I'm going to turn the volume up. Ooh, it's on maximum. That's interesting. It's not usually on maximum. I'm just going to check the volume levels. Here we go. That's better. So I'm going to set it to 20. Hopefully you can hear me okay over the top of the aeroplane once it gets up and running. We'll check the sound levels again. So magnetos are on. We set the prop RPM, which I can do via levers here. So I've got buttons to do that because it's awkward to get at. We open the throttles a centimetre. You'll notice I've actually got this programmed, so I've got reversers working, so I can go into reverse So you'll notice in the real thing, they push in before they go further back. And obviously the gust lock is in the way of the throttles, so they'll only advance to about 1500 RPM unless you remove the gust lock. But anyway, so we're going to move the propeller RPM forwards. We've done that. We go to fuel select and say both. So let's get the yoke out of the way as well while we're at this. So it's behind. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong checklist. So we've opened the throttles a little bit. We go to battery, which is down here, and we turn the battery on. Then we turn the master start switch on. We turn the wing and tail lights on over here, and the anti-collision lights on. And we put the fuel boost on for the right engine to norm. And we are going to go and look overhead at the levers. You'll notice we said there are some. So we're going to move the mixture quite a long way forwards. There's a bit of a bug in Flight Simulator. If you follow the correct procedure to start the engines on the Caribou, you won't be able to. On the real thing, they can start the engines with the fuel pumps on and the mixture on idle cutoff, and they'll actually start. They won't in the simulator. You have to move the mixtures forwards a bit. Okay, so to start the engines, we've got the master start switch already on, so we literally just go start and prime, and the engine bursts into life. You can see the pressure coming up. You can see over here, manifold pressure has gone to 10 for the right engine. So then we can do the same for the left engine. So we can go take the boost pump back to off. We can put the left one to norm and start and prime, and it bursts into life, and you can see all the levels coming up, which is good. Take prime back off, take the boost pump back off for the moment, turn the master start switch back off, and we can carry on with the rest of the checklist. Now we've got the engines running. So the first thing we need to go and look at, and I missed this on the original look at the aircraft, over here in the center, or to the left knee of the co-pilot, is the inverter. So it's already set to main, but underneath these red covers the generators for DC are not on, so we have to turn those on. So then we are not depleting the battery, so 10-15 minutes into the flight we won't suddenly get failures happening around the cockpit. So it's just worth knowing about that. So you have to go and turn the DC system on after powering up the engines. Okay, so we want to go and look at the radios. So that really means the GPS, because the radios are already on. So we're going to let the GPS acquire satellites now, and we'll also go and look at our flight plan. We are at Swansea, and we're going to fly 77 degrees, 30 miles over to the Brecon VOR, so 117.45. So we want that tuned in on the on the nav radio. 117.45. The yellow mark on top is the volume of it. So if you've got the audio panel, the audio switches are down here, by the way. If you've got that switched on to make the sounds, then you can hear the Morse code. So Shudley's asking, would a DC-3 be a good plane to fly along? I don't really mind. You fly whatever you want. Okay, so we've done the radios. So we need to go back overhead and get rid of the gust lock. So we can just click on it and it slides it forwards. We need to correct the barometric pressure to the airfield. So instead of just saying I'm going to do this and press B, as I quite often do on one of these flights, let's go and click on the airfield. go and look at the weather at the airfield, and you can see here 1019 or 30.09 depending on what we've got in the aircraft. So we've got hectopascals or millibars in normal speak. 1019 we need it set on, so you can see it's on 1015, and we can tune this in so 1019 would be there. And the way you can double check this is you can see at the moment it thinks our altitude is 250 feet above sea level. So let's go and see what the actual elevation, 267, so it's not too far away. So it's a way of double checking, or if you can't find out the barometric pressure but you do know the altitude of the airfield, then you can just tune the altitude in by calibrating to a known field altitude. Okay, so we're almost there, so we'll go and turn the landing lights on while we're here before we even taxi out, which is a bit improper, but we're not going to worry too much. We're going to put the flaps to take off position, and I think that's probably about it. Just checking around, carb heat is off. For takeoff and landing you don't have auto feathering on, although it says nothing about that in the aircraft. That's just standard practice. You would only use auto feather in cruise. I think we're more or less there. We could program the flight on the GPS just for a bit of fun, I guess. So if we move the camera over there so we can actually see it. It's a bit tricky to get at. So if we come back down, and there we go. So we're going to press flight plan. Today we are going over to, let's have a look, BCN or EGFH is our beginning position. So EGFH, Swansea, enter. And then the Brecon VOR, which is going to be BCN. I mean, we're going to use radio navigation, but it's nice to have this as a backup. So then we're going to Yeovilton, which is Echo Golf Delta Yankee. So Echo Golf Delta Yankee. Enter. Then we're going to Exeter, Echo Golf Tango Echo. So Echo Golf Tango Echo Exeter, enter. And I think we can roll the wheel, can't we, to get this to move. Then we're going to Berry Head VOR, BHD, or Bravo Hotel Delta. Bravo Hotel Delta, Berry Head, enter. And then finally we are going to arrive at Alderney, Echo Golf Juliet Alpha. Echo Golf Juliet Alpha, Alderney, enter. So there's our flight plan done, and we can come back out of here and we can obviously see the lines on the map. It's interesting that's a white line. So if we were to come in here and go and highlight that and press menu, activate leg, then we get the orange line, then it goes, there we go, sorry, the magenta line. Excellent. So that was a bit strange that it did that. Normally you would get the first leg activated for you, so I've just gone and shown you how you can activate legs. So I'm just reading the comments. I love the control panel, reminds me of the Vilga, I think it's pronounced. Would love to see if you can explain how that weird speed indicator works. Just can't tell the airspeed on this aircraft. Yeah, it's quite straightforward. The indicated airspeed is in hundreds of knots. So that's 100 knots, that's 200 knots, that's 300 knots. This aircraft won't do much more than 200. I think it's maximum. You can see the maximum line there is about 210. Yeah. So it's not too difficult at all. It's got this weird rolling number as well. We'll have a look at it while we're in flight. It's always a bit tricky. I'm sorry for I just left the microphone. Somebody's printed something next to me, and it came flying out of the printer and flew across the room because somebody pushed in the guide for the for the paper tray. Anyway, sorry, distractions. So playing around with this aircraft this morning, if you reduce the RPM too much or pull the throttles back to cut off, you can actually lose the engines. So obviously you can restart them, but it's just something to be aware of if you have the engines at cut off. Okay, so I think we're pretty much ready to go. I'm just double checking a few things. So we turn the master starter off. God, I've got a frog in my throat today. So parking brake off, so you could see that moved there. We will also go and put the yoke back so you get to see it moving around as we fly. Ease the throttles forwards. It takes a little bit of effort to get this thing rolling, and we're rolling. So we're just going to avoid the Cessna that's in front of us. Make sure we don't clout in with our wing. Oh, and I've killed the engines. Doing exactly what I told you. So let's go and restart them. So master starter, prime, start. And left engine. So we have the engines back on. And turn the starter back off. So that just proves exactly what I said. You have to be careful about pulling the throttles all the way back when you're not in the air, you know, when there's no speed on the propellers. So just before we pull out onto the runway, we're going to go and move the mixture to fully rich. Propellers are already at max. You'll remember that we actually we'll play with the nav radio once we're in the air. Okay, so we should be good to go. Yeah, we're on the correct runway for the wind. We're going to have to use quite a bit of left stick. Also left rudder to hold the centre line, because of the wind coming from the right hand side of the aircraft is pushing the tail to the left, causing the nose to go to the right. So we're in the air pretty quickly. You can see that crosswind is pushing us left now. So gear up. We'll do a quick circuit of Swansea before we get going. So flaps up, feeding in some back stick to counter the reduction of lift until we get some speed up. So you can see now on that indicated airspeed there's 100 knots we're just coming through, and that's marked here in tens of knots, which is quite amusing. So you've got hundreds of knots and tens of knots. It's very odd. Okay, so we'll pull the throttles back to, you can see there's manifold pressure here and RPM with, you know, safe limits for it. We'll have a closer look at that once we're trimmed out in flight. So normally you'd be looking, let's see if I can do this without crashing the aeroplane. Yeah, normally you'd be looking to pull the mixture back a bit and the RPM. But we'll have a play with that and looking at some of the instruments during the flight. So we're just coming back round. Here's the airfield we've just left. Let's go and scoot over to the window so we can see it as we come round. So this is Swansea. Apparently it's closing in the real world, so you have to take your chances now. If you do want this special scenery for Swansea, you have to go and get it now. I guess the scenery will always be available, even though the airfield's not going to be there soon. It's a shame that the AI aircraft keeps spawning in on the service area down there, because obviously you wouldn't get a jet that big at this airfield. You might get a Twin Otter or a Caravan, but you wouldn't get anything much bigger than that normally. I guess that's not to say that things this big haven't landed at Swansea in the past. Okay, so let's go and start looking at the navigation route. So we've got nav 1 here. If we go and spin the omni-bearing select around, it will tell us what heading to go to the VOR that we tuned in before we took off. Here it comes. So we need to go about 80 degrees. So on the compass here, if we look carefully at it, we're going to press D. Notice it jumped. So that's a shortcut for comparing against the binnacle compass, which is up here. So we're going about the right direction now. So we're going to fly along this bit of coast and then off across the hills. So I'm just trimming the elevators and the ailerons to keep us level. We've got live weather on. It's quite a calm day, or at least it is at the moment. So there's a little bit of wind aloft, so yeah, we've got 20 knots. So you can see we're just coming along to our track. We're going to fly over the top of Swansea and then over the Brecon Beacons, which is the hills that we can see out in the distance over there. So this is Swansea we're just approaching. So if we sit up in the cockpit, we can see that. Just before we go much further, let's have a look at these gauges then. So notice we have got the RPM too high at the moment, so we can play with that to get the RPM into the green area. So all I've done there is used my buttons on my yoke to pull back the propeller RPM. The other thing you'll notice is the mixture has a, if we go and look across at it, auto lean area, so we can pull the mixture back to auto lean once we're in flight. Whoops. This is where this gets really tricky unless you've got loads of levers on your desk. So that's our normal kind of cruising position. So if we then level out, you'll see we'll gently pick up speed. You'll notice the manifold pressure there is low, so although we've turned the RPM down, we can now increase the throttle. It's all a bit of a balancing act. So yeah, you can see as we're picking up speed, we're picking up lift, and the nose is starting to lift. So we're just gradually trimming the whole time. Okay, so we're off to the right of our track. Obviously we wanted to fly over the top of Swansea. Let's have a look from outside as we do so. So there's Swansea. Swansea Bay that we're going along the coast of. Okay, so we're going to keep half an eye on this instrument, knowing we wanted to be on an 80-degree track. We're flying about 70 at the moment, so we'll come back towards the track we wanted, towards the VOR, and fly out across the Brecon Beacon hills along the way. So this seems to do about 150 knots in a kind of an optimum leaned out cruise. Obviously we could go a lot higher and go faster in the thinner air, and we could obviously, you know, just rev the engines up and go a lot faster if we wanted to. I just thought it was interesting to show you, you know, where these needles sit for the green areas. So we're in the RPM green area, but we can push way beyond it. So we could push out to that far edge. And you can see we're climbing again. We're picking up speed as soon as I did that. So there's no autopilot in this aircraft. There never was. So when you see people whinging saying, oh, I wish this had an autopilot, well, it never did. So good luck with that one. So we're off to the left of that radial now. So we're just going to turn back across. So if we turn to an easterly direction, we'll cross over the line again. So obviously the reason I was climbing is because the Brecon Beacon hills are quite high, so we needed to get a little bit of altitude to get over them. So you can see we're picking up a little bit of speed even though we're climbing, because we opened the engines up that little bit. So it's worth looking up in this thing. It's got a glass roof, so yeah, the visibility around the cockpit, or the light, is great. So obviously there's a lot of wind farms up here. So we're just coming back onto the track. Can we turn on? Yeah, we can. It's worth looking on our plan down here. Like you can see, we're almost on the track exactly. It's worth pointing out we can do a kind of a forward-facing mode. If we pull back one, we get the distance. So to Brecon, interestingly, it's not tracking our distance or anything, which is a bit odd. That's the windmills. While we're busy looking at everything, we've deviated from our track towards the VOR. This is interesting. So can I switch the CDI mode? Will that give me... No, I can't. I'm just wondering if I could get distance measuring equipment working. I don't think it does that, or at least I haven't found it yet. It's giving us ground speed. So we have a look at the map, see where we are. Just tracking along our track out towards the Brecon Beacons. Should we start to push the engines a bit? Otherwise we're going to be here all day, aren't we? So what we're going to do is increase the RPM to max on the engines, and you'll notice that's pushed the manifold pressure up a little bit, but not into a dangerous area. So let's get this level. Turbulence is pushing us all over the place, and we'll turn left to reacquire the track. You can see now the speed is not making a huge amount of... This is the interesting thing about propeller pitch and mixture, and it doesn't always do what you would imagine. So it's not always the wisest thing in the world to increase the propeller RPM or the mixture. Or aeroplanes have a kind of, you know, a sweet spot that they sit within. It's a bit like a boat propeller with it cavitating, where if you just rev a propeller too much, it doesn't actually grab the water. It's the same thing for a propeller on an aeroplane. So someone's asking what these lights do down here. So it's to switch these systems between GPS and nav radio. So if I turn to GPS, this is reflecting the GPS. If I switch it to nav, it's the same. So that's the equivalent of what the CDI button would normally do. Yeah. So this is reflecting the nav radio rather than the GPS track. So we can find out by tuning this. Look, to get straight to the VOR, we need to fly 90 degrees, which we are not. Oh, sorry, 80 degrees, which we are not doing. So we'll turn to 80 degrees. Then that will take us directly to the VOR. And we've just flown over the top of it, I think. Let's have a look. Oh no, no. I'm just taking. Oh, this is the. Yeah, that's the ADF, which isn't tuned in, so it's spinning. It doesn't know what to do. It's interesting though, isn't it? Well, that should have been picking up VOR. Oh, is it VOR number 2, which isn't tuned in? Let's go and tune in the second VOR radio to 11745. See if it gives us the same. Yeah, so it's doing it. Look, it's aligned with directly to the VOR. So this arrow is giving us nav 2. The course deviation indicator on this instrument is showing us nav 1. Yeah, you can see, look, we're straightening up on the course pretty easily now. It's a bit of a journey of a discovery with this aircraft because it's very lacking in documentation. I actually ended up searching the internet for a DHC4 pilot operating handbook and found one for the military variant. So obviously it had lots of stuff in there about the radar and things like that that the military one had, but the basic kind of text about the switches and what they all do was in there, which was really handy. Jose Maria is saying this plane needs an urgent autopilot. No, it doesn't. It never had one. That's like saying a Spitfire should have ILS. This is it is accurate to the real aeroplane. If you're saying it should have autopilot, you may as well say it should have a glass cockpit and it should have a head-up display. It's simulating a real aircraft that really existed and it didn't have autopilot. There may have been variants that had it retrofitted, but the exact one that's modelled here from a real one didn't have it. Okay, so we are going to leave the Brecon VOR on a course of 152 degrees, which will take us out across the Bristol Channel down to Yeovilton. So we need to think about that in terms of our heading. So we'll set a marker for 152 degrees. Going to be somewhere there, and we can also set the omni bearing selector, to be honest, of this nav 1, which is tuned into the Brecon VOR to 152 degrees. It's going to be somewhere there. So then if we were to turn across, now it's saying we're going from the VOR now. So if we go on an intercept course of say 120 degrees, we will see this come in at the point we cross the line, if you imagine in our head what we're doing, so that we are cutting the corner off. So when we get to the line, you will see the course deviation indicator sweep in as we go to cross over it. So at the moment it's saying the line is to the left of us. Yeah? So if we hold 120 degrees, I'm just going to turn left slightly. You can see the English Channel out in front of us. Oh, sorry, Bristol Channel. So we'll hold about 120 degrees. So we know the heading we want to go is 150. We're doing 120, so at some point soon this will sweep across. The wind is pushing us away from the track, which is worth knowing about. So we are going to have to hold an angle less than 150 or 152 to hold the 152 track. So we'll go for 145 maybe when we get there. That's why the plane keeps rotating, by the way. It's the crosswind that we're hitting. Should have a look at it from outside. Here comes the CDI, by the way. So as soon as we straighten up, we'll have a look from outside. So once this line reaches the middle, it means we are on that 152 degree track away from the VOR. So we'll turn right to about 140 something. Remembering that there's a crosswind coming from the left hitting us, which will be pushing us right. So we'll need to crab across that. So see what we're doing there? So we're broadly in the right place now, crabbing slightly, but going along the track. And we can obviously adjust by watching this needle to go left a bit or right a bit. So let's have a look outside. This is Wales. Look, there's a fault in the landscape. There's a huge missing piece. It's probably a server fault, to be honest. And we have company. Whoa! And of course the airplane starts to rotate underneath us, which is always fun. So we're off to the right, so we do need to steer left a little bit. So we're off to the right of the track. So it's not too difficult to do this. You just keep adjusting as you fly. Keep an eye on the vertical speed, keep trimming. It's important that you don't fly an aeroplane with trim. You kind of get the aeroplane in the attitude you want and then use the trim to stop it moving from there. And try to ignore spikes, because obviously we're flying over hills, it's a windy day, we're going to get turbulence. We're getting some freezing, so that's going to be interesting. So we have got heating, windscreen heating, and it doesn't actually work, which is a shame. Okay, so what do we have in the way of... We've got lighting. We haven't got much in the way of anti-ice stuff, have we? Of course, another way to get away from icing is just to get below it. So we're going to go low and get out of the cloud. As we do so, we're going to keep an eye on the indicated airspeed. So obviously as soon as we come out of the moisture in the air, there'll be nothing to freeze. So you can see it's ebbing away already. We have got heating controls behind us, so we could go and turn that on. It's on normal at the moment. Master switch to go and turn it on. So we'll see how that goes, see if it has any effect on it. So you can see that we've already almost thawed out. So we just need to stay out of the cloud basically. Oh, it's a shame that the windscreen heating isn't operable in the aircraft. That would have been good fun. So I'm just pushing the engines on. Now we've stopped descending. RPM again. We're a bit fast on the RPM, but we did say we're not interested really in doing the most perfect, efficient flight today. So someone's on about opening the ramps mid-air. You've got all sorts of controls up here for, I mean, we're not using carb heat either, so we could have a look at that and see what effect that has on the engine as well. And we've got the rams, which they were talking about. Are they operable? Or is it just because it's behind that lever that it's not doing it? No, they're inoperable. Do we have... No, we don't. I'm not even going to tell you what I was about to look for. If we have a look outside, this thing doesn't have cowl flaps that I can see on the engines. There's nothing like that. We're climbing again. We need to be careful. The cloud base is descending, I should say. We're off to the left, so we're going to turn across track. So we wandered a little bit off to the left. So we're almost over the south part of England. Just coming in. Weston-super-Mare, the Mendip Hills, which are south of Bristol, and carry on across to Bath, and on our way to Yeovilton. It's a shame we can't get distance measuring working. I would have expected that to have worked. It's saying no route, which is interesting. Maybe it will only work if we have the GPS enabled. Let's just try that briefly. So if I go... I'm just seeing if these switches have any effect over here. They don't, which is a bit odd. So there's various things that do work, various things that don't work. So we're back on our track, so we need to turn left to make sure we don't carry on across. So remember we had a crosswind, so we want to be just off to the left of our intended track. We can use the attitude indicator without looking out the window to see what's going on. See that we're slightly off to the right now. If we just hold a steady course, we'll probably drift back towards it. Okay, so this is Weston-super-Mare. If we look behind us, we can see the coast and the beach. They have motorbike races on the beach at Weston-super-Mare. So these beaches, they often have motorbike races. It got called Weston-super-Mud, as far as I remember. They used to do like enduro races and things. Just reading the comments, yeah. Ernie Module. Cali Fragrances, sorry, you're saying, yeah, about the heating behind me. I just went and checked that a minute ago. Only more just saying, I think a co-pilot would be useful. Yes, in a manual aircraft, flying it on your own is difficult. You know, with so many things to do by hand. So that's why you would normally have had 2 crew, and they work as a team and they operate the aircraft together. So you'll have one person flying, the other person navigating, and suddenly it's not such a struggle. So we've got, how far have we got to go? Measure distance, 20 miles to run until we get to Yeovilton. We can tune in the VOR at Yeovilton. So, oh, it's a Vortec actually, or TACAN, sorry. We don't have TACAN radios, so there's no point. We only have VOR radios in the Caribou. Okay, so we'll do a touch and go at Yeovilton. It's all rather calm now, isn't it? We've figured out how the aircraft works. So let's have a look way out in front of us. Can we see the airfield yet? Not quite. So based on the wind coming in from the northeast, we're going to land on runway, or do our touch and go, runway 08, I guess. So we probably want to deviate away from this course towards the south. So let's take a compass direction. It would probably be good to do about a 170 degree track, so 165 degrees based on what we've seen. So let's go and move the heading bug to about 165, so about there. So we're just looking to give ourselves a room to turn once we get to the airfield, and room to make an approach. Yeah, I was just reading the live stream comments. I don't think this has distance measuring equipment. It's got this instrument here, but it only seems to show ground speed, and there's no way of... I've tried switching things on and off, like the various nav GPS switches, and it doesn't seem to have an effect on it. And this is not keeping the leg of the flight up to date, which is really frustrating. Look, so if we went to the next, no, I didn't want to do that, clear that. We go to the next leg and then say menu and activate leg and enter, and then press flight plan again, and then pull this back to the page. Is not showing distance to go to the next. Oh, that's because although it's saying GPS mode, I wonder if there's some weird cock-up they've made in this, where if we switch this over to GPS mode, just going to keep us away from the ground while we're doing this. No, it's still not showing the numbers, which is really odd. So there's a few bugs in this still. We are way off track now. So I'm going to counter by going beyond the direction we were going to head. We'll turn this back to nav. What does that one do? Slave, okay. So if we slave that from this, it should replicate it. Our routes. Coming back towards the track we wanted to be on before we started playing around with the aircraft and not looking where we were going. Well, yeah, of course, someone's on about shared controls, then obviously every aircraft has dual controls that are synchronized, but unless that's not what you're talking about. So keep an eye out for Yeovilton off to our left. There's the airfield and the runway. So we're going to begin turning towards the runway now. Again, coming off the throttle. So we could have been using auto feather while we were flying. During approach, you shouldn't use it. Again, it's completely undocumented that it even exists in the aircraft, so we don't know if it actually does anything beyond lighting that light up, to be honest. So we're just coming into Yeovilton. We'll do a touch and go at Yeovilton. So, gear down. Flaps to landing position. Does Yeovilton have ILS? Not from runway 8. That's a shame, otherwise we could have had a play with it. So you'll notice the wind coming in from our left is pushing us to the right side of the approach, so we're just countering that gently. So Yeovilton is the home of the Fleet Air Arm Museum as well. We travel down to the southwest quite often to visit my parents, and there's signs along the main road which you can see we're about to fly over. holding 100 knots. Got an empty aircraft, so it's very, very easy to control on approach and descent. So normally for approach you would go and put the boost pumps to norm as well. See, the wind has just gusted and pushed us right. So we're going to correct for that, get back onto the centre line. There's no landing markers on this runway, which is interesting. Pappy lights seem to be a bit... there's an ongoing discussion about the Pappy lights in Flight Simulator not always telling you the truth. Okay, so we'll just regain the centre line and accelerate and nose up, and we're back away again. So gear up. It's back onto the centre line. Look at the angle we're crabbing at to hold the centre line in the wind. Okay, flaps back up. Throttles back gently. And next leg. So we're almost going to turn back on ourselves, 241 degrees. We want away from the VOR that we were tuned into. So let's just check what we were tuned into was 11745. So was that the... oh no, that was Tecan, wasn't it, at Yeovilton, so we can't use that. So we're using the next one, which will be... there's nothing at Exeter, so we're just going to have to fly the heading 241 degrees. We're flying with the wind though, so we shouldn't get pushed around. So we'll just go and move the heading bug to 241. We've already crossed 240, so let's press D again. So there's 240 on the gyro driven compass. So let's move the heading bug round. So the marker we need is 241, just as a reference, and we'll fly that heading until we get to Exeter. Another game you can play with nav radio is if you can get one to triangulate off. Which, yeah, there's nothing nearby worth doing it with. You could maybe do it with the Berry Head VOR. Depends what its range is. It's got 160 mile range, so it should work. We could actually tune this on the nav radio, and then when we know when the needle sweeps in, we're at the correct distance, or the correct angle from it. Trimming the airplane out a little bit. So if we set the nav radio to 112.05 and set the 189 course, then we'll see the needle when it gets there. So we want 112.05 on the nav radio. So 112.05. So we have picked it up. Of course, the aeroplane has started wandering while we were doing that, so we'll just straighten it back up. So the angle we would want is 189 degrees. So if we turn the Omni bearing selector to 189, so 60, 70, 80, 9 degrees, this will sweep in at the point we get to the angle. So as long as we can fly the track, obviously you can play games with marking on a map if you've got two VOR beacons to work from, and you can start cross-referencing. So even though we can cheat kind of, we've got GPS down here, so we can see our track. So we can see we're off to the left of it at the moment. I think it's just nice to think in terms of the old world of how navigation used to work. Well, I'm just reading the comments. The big problem with the Pappy lights is they don't agree with glide slopes, and neither of them agree with the actual physical arrangement of the runway, which is always a bit odd. There's a 737 pilot that works with PMDG. He's got his own YouTube channel, and he did a video specifically about it recently. And basically that you can't trust what you're seeing. So your usual aim on a big jet coming in, you should be 50 feet over the apron of the runway to can then continue on for your 1,000-foot touchdown on the markers. They're usually painted as rectangles, and that doesn't add up with what you see in the simulator, either on the Pappy lights or the glide slope usually. So how are we doing in terms of the track? We are slowly coming back to the track by flying across the route. So if we go and have a look on that on the map, you'll see that happening. We're slowly making our way back to the track. Down to Exeter Airport. So I am going to have a little break when we get to Exeter. I'm going to go make a coffee. So I'll leave the aircraft parked with the engines ticking over while I go and run in, grab a coffee and come back out again. Let's have a look from outside. It's a windy day. Pushed all over the place. So we are now back on the track, so we can turn left and reacquire the direction we wanted to be going. Notice the vertical speeds jumping all over the place. It's just the turbulence from the hills we're flying over and the wind. Okay, so we're about halfway now between Yeovilton and Exeter. Exeter Airport's at, slightly raised altitude. There's hills around it as well, which make it kind of interesting. About to pass by Dunkeswell Airfield. We should be able to see it as we pass by. There it is. That's Dunkeswell. I didn't realise we could actually move straight through the wall of this. That's interesting. doing? We're off to the left, so the plane has been busy rotating itself. Small amount. Nothing too badly there. Rolling all on its own, and again look, hit a patch of turbulence and it dropped the right wing a foot, and now the left wing. It's a bit of a gusty day, so I'm going to hand fly it quite carefully. So it's Edson saying, how old am I? I am going to be 50 years old next week. I'm actually going away for a few days, so you'll see no videos from me for a little while. So we're going to Amsterdam. Never been to Holland before, so seeing as it's nearby to the UK, we're going to go on the Channel Tunnel, go on the train underneath the sea, and go and visit Holland for a few days. Go and explore. We're going to visit Anne Frank's house and sit in lots of bars drinking beer and reading books, basically. No, we're going to go and visit loads of museums. Have a bit of a cultural weekend, long weekend. I've been to Paris lots of times, been to various cities in Germany, been to various cities in Spain, never been to Holland, so we thought, why not? So we saved up our pennies and booked the train. Did we talk about the oil temperature in the red? So we did, early on we were talking about the engines, and that it's not the most accurate thing in the world. So yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? So you've got the carb air temperature, but you haven't really got good control over the carb. We put carb heat on earlier to see if it would make much difference to the engine performance, and it really didn't. So if we put it back on cold, we'll see again over the next few minutes if it comes back down. So you can see it's dropped precipitously, which is quite funny, but it doesn't seem to affect performance too much. The other thing that's quite interesting, you obviously see as soon as we turn on the DC inverters down here, we saw the DC climb, but we never saw the amp needles never seem to move. I had to play with it for about half an hour this morning, switching things on and off, causing drain and all sorts of things, and couldn't really get the amperage needles to budge. So there's various things that aren't quite modelled, I don't think. It's like we had a play right at the start with getting all the needles into the green areas. So like pulling back the RPM, for example. So if we can do that here, look. And pulling back the manifold pressure so it's just in the green area still. So leaning the plane out basically. We didn't turn the boost pumps off, did we, after climbing out of Yeovilton? That was a mistake and a half. So we're just flying past. You notice the needle is sweeping in, so we're exactly at the distance we thought now that Exeter should be. So if we look outside, there's the airfield, look. So by measuring from the beacon in the distance across the bay, the angle from it, we knew exactly when we would be parallel with Exeter, which is really cool. So to suit the wind, we are going to do left circuit into runway 08, which you can see 08 down there. So we are going to stop at Exeter for a minute or two so I can go and grab a coffee. Oh, the sim has frozen. Let's hope it wakes back up. Give it a second. There it goes. And we're going to cut the throttles back to 50%, start descending, and do this visually so we can see the airfield just disappearing behind us over there, runway 08. So this is the mouth of the River Exe that we can see here, and that'll be Dawlish Warren out on the side and Exmouth down here. So coming in, losing height as we go, speed is remaining about 120 knots. Let's sit down or sit up in the cockpit and look out over the top so we can see 08 appearing. So slow down, roll in towards 08, gear down, flaps down, and we should be putting the boost pumps on for approach. The auto feather should be off, and it already was because we never turned it on because it doesn't seem to have much effect other than turning the lights on next to it. One of the aircraft that does operate around the auto feather and prop sync is the Banderanti. I don't know if you've seen that in Flight Sim. It's very good. A lot of people complain because the sound isn't very good in it, but the actual operation of the aircraft is great. Coming into this strong headwind is quite fun. We're being thrown around a little bit. Doesn't help that there's these hills directly in front of the approach at Exeter, which will throw the aeroplane around. So we should be putting our wheels down on the markers. Well, that's what our aim point should be, with 50 feet over the runway apron. We're probably a bit high. We're being thrown around by the turbulence, something awful. Yeah, we're floating a little bit, so it came in a little bit fast, and there we go, we're down. Okay, so flaps up, look for the next exit, which is just coming. We'll exit to the right and go and grab a coffee. So boost pumps can come back off. Remember, I warned you earlier about running the engines too slowly on tick over, that they will die. So I've just increased the throttle a little bit. So we'll just park here for the moment. Parking brake on. And I'm going to leave the engines just ticking over. So I'm just going to look at that manifold pressure. For those interested in seeing it, in the Caribou you can operate the doors, so let's go and open the rear door and scoot down so we can see it happen. While I go and get the coffee, let's go and open the door, let some fresh air in, shall we? So we can set the cargo doors to active and open the top and the bottom parts of the doors. So come around and have a look, see that happening. So I'm going to go and have a make a quick coffee, and I'll be back in a minute. Right, I have coffee. So, we go and jump back inside the aeroplane, and we can lift the doors back up, close that one as well. Wait for them to close. Should we go for a wander around inside? It's quite cool, isn't it? So let's just jump straight back through, and we will close the door and turn these switches back to off. Close the lids on them and turn the door mechanism back off. Okay, so we are at Exeter. Our next leg is going to be down to the Bury Head VOR. So we're going to tune that in. Oh, it's already tuned in, wasn't it? So we just follow that along 20 miles, and then we're going over to Alderney. So we're just using the VOR as a means of navigation, really, to make it simple for ourselves. This GPS is majorly broken, isn't it? Because it's not following the legs at all. If we go into flight plan and push in here, we want to go now from over to Bury Head. So if we press the menu button, we can activate the leg. We shouldn't have to activate legs on the flight plan, but we're having to for some reason. I only put enough water in the kettle. I'm just reading this live stream. I only put enough water in the kettle for 1 cup. So we've got a fast boil kettle, so the whole bottom of the kettle boils, but I only put enough in for my mug. Right, let's get comfortable. Okay, so what runway and how are we going to get there at Exeter? So we want to go back onto runway 08 ideally. So we're going to taxi around through taxiway Charlie and Bravo to get back. So we're just going to be a bit nosy, shall we, and have a look around the airfield. So flaps back to takeoff position. We never turned the landing lights off, so we will go and turn the boost pumps back on though, just while we're taxiing. So this is the I've forgotten the name of the company. Pilot Plus Exeter scenery. So it's quite demanding, it's very detailed. That's why we're seeing a little bit of stuttering as it loads assets in. But it's very, very true to the real place. So you can see it's actually, you know, remarkably accurate. So if we go and have a look from outside, let's slow down a bit so we get to enjoy this a little bit. It's actually remarkably accurate to the real location. So you can see it's really struggling to draw it and to keep up with everything on Ultra, because obviously it's drawing everything out to the horizon. So there's, you know, tons and tons of baggage boxes. All the road markings are all there, look, with all the road furniture. It's amazing, actually. So just being a bit nosy as we taxi out. Shady is asking how I learned the planes so quickly. Hard work is the answer to that one. So when this one came out yesterday, I spent the entire lunchtime of my working day looking at it, and then yesterday evening recorded with it. So this taxiway's just gone uphill, so I'm having to open the engine slightly. So a good example would be when the A310 came out, which was so different than anything else. That took me basically 24 hours to really get a handle on procedures. So it was the Saturday that it arrived. I spent the whole day at it. And my other half's fine with that because the YouTube channel makes money, so I was one of the early ones that got a workable explanation of how the A310 works out there, which paid off the effort. But it's not all about money, it's the interest is the reason I do it. All of these aircraft I find really interesting. And you can kind of see there's a common, a way that aeroplanes have been designed, and you can see the connective ideas between them. That's what really fascinates me. It's like a lot of people go through a checklist and it's just do this, do that, do this. I don't like doing that. I would rather know why. Why are we doing that thing? What does that piece of hardware do? How does that work? I think if you understand how something works, you've got a huge advantage over someone who just knows the checklist. And obviously there's tons of materials out there to read on the internet, to find out how things work. It's like I did the video recently about flight levels and, transition altitude and transition level and what it all actually really means. And so once you kind of get that in your head and you understand, there's no longer a mystery when somebody's using that language. Okay, so boost pumps are on, the landing lights are already on, the flaps are in takeoff position, the mixture is good, let's go. So aircraft is accelerating. Rotate and we'll come straight off the ground because it does that. And wheels up. Look from outside as we leave Exeter behind. Again, you can see us crabbing into that wind and the wind pushing the tail round, kind of weathercocking the aeroplane. It's always interesting when that happens. So if you remember, we said we could use VOR1 as our guide. So 189 degrees we want the heading marker moved to. But we have to remember that then the wind will be coming from our left the whole time, so we'll have to account for that. So flaps can come up now. So we are off to the left of the 189 degree track, so we will go beyond 189 degrees. Yeah, so we're going to intercept the track that we want to be on towards the VOR. But look at that, look at the wind pushing us around. We know the Brecon VOR is right out on the end of the peninsula. So we know vaguely which direction we're going anyway. So let's just go and aim this way rather than that way. So if we go and have a look at the map in a moment just to make sense of it for you. Just going to try and stop the aeroplane from putting itself in the ground while we look at the map briefly. So yeah, we're coming back towards the 189 degree track. And then we fly out towards Brecon, and then we fly out from Brecon. This will be the important one, at a given angle to get to Alderney across the ocean. So the only thing we'll have to go by for quite some time will be the VOR radio beacon and our heading. And we will use it to get to Alderney. So David says hi, that's my dad. Hello. Just flying down towards the Brecon. Sorry, Berry Head, not Brecon. I keep saying that. Flying down to the Berry Head VOR, and then we're going to fly out from there over to Alderney. Dave Dugdale says, how are you finding the Caribou? It's good. The more time I'm spending with it, the more things I'm finding that aren't actually there or don't work. Things like the carb heat doesn't seem to do much. This little panel down here that should give us the distance measuring doesn't work, or you would imagine it should have done that. It's a bit odd that the GPS keeps losing the active leg. It doesn't automatically proceed to the next leg, or proceed. So I'm having to keep going in and selecting the next leg. There's all sorts of odd little bits and bobs which I'm sure they'll fix. So yeah, you could say I'm stress testing it. Okay, so we're heading in towards the VOR. Obviously we can see this on the map as well, so if we go and increase the range on this, we'll see it coming. So there, we've gone off to the right side now, look, of the track where we were kept flying for too long in the direction we were looking at going. So we're going to go back across. Yeah, can you see what we did there? So we flew across, therefore the needle has gone to the left because the track is to the left of us. So this is the 189 degree track into, or radial, into Berry Head. The important one for us will be the 130 degree radial on the way out of Berry Head. Let's go and get us back on the track because this is kind of annoying. I mean, we could do it just by moving the Omni bearing selector and then fly 185 degrees, which would do the same trick. Okay, so where are we flying past? Let's go and have a little look. So this town that we're just passing is Torquay, we're about to go past, which is the famous mythical location of Fawlty Towers. So if you ever wondered, this is Torquay where Fawlty Towers was supposedly set. It wasn't actually filmed in Torquay, none of it was. So all of the interiors were filmed, I think, at Pinewood or Elstree, and all of the exterior shots were a place called Weuben Grange, I think it was called. Which is, no, not Weuben, it's something Grange, I've forgotten the name of it, but it's just down the road from us actually. So yeah, it was actually filmed in Buckinghamshire, which is about 200 miles from here. But yeah, this is the mythical location of Fawlty Towers. Torquay is a typical fishing village. You can see the harbour down there and various bits of housing estates and things that have grown up over the years. It's turned into quite a big place. I guess a lot of these villages on the southwest of England that turned into kind of tourist destinations, that all happened during the Victorian era, I guess. Okay, so we're going to switch over to 130 degrees now. We're just coming up to Berry Head. So we'll come to our Omni bearing selector and swing it round to 130. So if we fly 150 for a while, we will intercept it. Make sense? So let's just swing this as well, so we know what heading we eventually want to be going. So we'll now turn to 150 degrees until we intercept the beacon. So we're just looking at our course here on the gyro compass. Haven't quite got that to 130, we have now. Notice this spins back. So we're flying 150, here comes the radial, we're right over the top of it at the moment, so we just turn to 130 degrees. And we're good. So we're going to press D just to make sure that things are lined up correctly. At the moment it's saying we're off to the right, we're going to pay no attention to it for a few moments though, because we are right on top of it, and if you chase a VOR when you're right on top of them, it's just a fool's game. So you can see we looks like we're heading out into the middle of nowhere, but about 70 miles in that direction is the island of Alderney in the Channel Islands, and this is why we're going to be a lot more careful about navigating now. So let's go and do that what we were saying. So we're going to turn across the track of the VOR to reacquire the direction we want to be going, to make the needle come in. So we're actually flying closer to 120 now rather than 130. Remember, we've got the wind as well to deal with, so we might need less than that, so we'll go for 110 degrees even. So we'll continue turning gently, because the wind is coming from our left and is going to push us sideways. So if we maintain 110 degrees for a little while, right, let's have a look at the engines now. Now we've finished climbing and messing around. Let's pull them back into the green area on the manifold pressure. RPM is still looking good, it's in the green. Here comes the course deviation indicator, so we will start turning right in a moment and then try and hold that 130 degree line. So even with the crosswind, we're going to have to do a little bit of ready reckoning along the way. So someone's commenting about the inside-outside feeling about some of the planes. Yeah, the glass is modelled very well in some aeroplanes. You can see on this it's got dirt on the glass, which really helps with that factor of immersion. Some of them don't have that. Some of them it's overdone and they look a mess. So we've just passed through. We've gone to the left of the track now. So if we fly 130 for a while, we'll get blown by the wind back onto the 130 track. Just trimming the elevators gently to try and stop us from descending. That's where I pulled the throttles back, so less power going through the propellers now. So it's not quite able to maintain speed, so we're losing a tiny bit of lift. Okay, so you can see, look, we're doing 130 degrees and we're being blown back towards the track. So then we'll play games with monitoring the direction we're travelling along the way, leaving England behind, heading out across the ocean. Across the sea, I should say. You can see there's a few white caps where the wind is pushing us around a little bit today. So this is very much an academic exercise, I guess. Just an academic navigation exercise, and all you really do is just keep correcting left or right a bit to maintain the track. And it gets easier the further away you get because it doesn't react as quickly. Because obviously, you know, the angles become less that you're dealing with. So let's have a look on the map. You can see pretty much we're nailed to the GPS track without using it, just by using the radial from the VOR. And we seem to be crabbing at about the right amount from this 20 to 25 knot gusting crosswind that we've got. And we're well on our way to Alderney now. So the plane is pretty well trimmed out. I'm not having to touch anything, it's just sitting here. Of course I'll say that, and we'll get a gust of wind that will roll the plane over and cause it to start rotating. You can see we're a little bit left wing down. So I'm just going to dare to roll it level, which will probably start us weathercocking, which is always the pain in the backside with this sort of flight. Yeah, David is saying in a boat you have to contend with the tide as well, so it's not just one set of forces to work the vectors out for, it's both tides and winds. Remember resolving forces in maths at school. It's always good fun. So you can see I've centered up on the direction we're supposed to be going, and we're drifting to the right of the track because the wind is pushing us to the right. So I'm going to cross back across, so 10 degrees or so to the left of our intended direction, and we should pull ourselves back onto the track. Obviously we can cheat to an extent by looking down here at the GPS track and see where we are in relation to it. But notice this is still not showing us anything about distances to the next waypoint. Even if we come back to this page, the data that you would normally expect to be there is not. And I think that's a bug. Also, you've got buttons here that switch between nav and GPS mode for the instruments, but then the GPS, the CDI button down here does nothing. So it's obviously not fully implemented, or they haven't thought it through properly. So it's something to look at, I guess. So we're busy rotating again, so I'm going to quickly just turn us left a bit more. We're still off to the right of the track. But the idea is we stay on this radial away from the VOR, and it takes us straight to Alderney. It should take us to the western edge, because that's where the airfield is. But once we get within sort of 20-30 miles, we'll be able to see it anyway. We'll see an island come out of the mist in the distance. It must be quite frightening for people like the likes of Lindbergh or any of the early aviators that were flying over oceans to kind of do accurate navigation. Obviously they would be doing astral navigation as well, using a sextant, which is why, I don't know if you've ever noticed, there's quarter windows in a lot of the early airliners like the 707s and things like that. It's for the astral navigation, to, you know, to aim a sextant through at the sun and moon position, and any guide stars if any are available in the evening. Can you lift the screen, right alt and a mouse in the GPS screen? So can I do what? Yes, you can. I see what you're on about now, sorry. Just popping the screen out. So yeah, it's odd, isn't it? So if I go and change this to... Is it going to let me do it? Not while this is popped out. So it becomes inoperable unless you've got a unit to use, I guess. That's a shame. obviously if you've got somebody I know that's just posted in the chat who I happen to know has a real sim gear set, then obviously they'd have all the knobs to control the autopilot, which would be much easier for them than it is for me. I just use the ones in the plane where it's plugged in the plane, which isn't always great. Oh, we're rotating and we're coming off to the right of our track, so we're going to go 100 degrees or so for a while and get back onto the trek. So that's the wind pushing us away from the track. So we're deliberately intercepting it again by flying at 15 or 20 degrees to the left of our intended track. And you can see the needle's already coming straight back in on the VOR. And then we'll just go for, say, 120 degrees when we're in the middle. So it's just a case of compensating along the way. No sign of Alderney yet, but then we're still quite a long way out. So we're back on the track, so I'm gently turning right. Are the waves big or am I flying low? I don't know. I don't really want to get too low, but no, I think it's just a few white caps on top of the waves. Little nav map tells us the wind is 26 knots, so yeah, you'd be looking for 30 or 40 knots to get big waves, wouldn't you? But you can see though that we are crabbing across the track. We're actually going probably that direction. But we are absolutely on the money for the track, which is good. Halfway to Alderney, our destination for the day. So Dave Dugdale said, just tried to see why I can't see online players on Little Nav Map and got a replay on server. Not found. So Little Nav Map, you will need the red aeroplane with an O switched on, otherwise you won't see the red aeroplanes. In the tools options, tools options online flying, you will need it set to custom. You will need the WhatsApp file URL filled in, which is on the Virtual Flight Online website. You can find this on the transmitter details. It's WhatsApp_IVAO. So this changed a few months ago. Update every 5 seconds, set the format to IVAO, and it should then provide the red aeroplanes, which is anyone running transmitter will appear on the map. Okay, we've gone off to the side of the direction we wanted to be going. To be honest, being off to the left isn't going to be a major problem because the rest of Alderney will be to the left of the track. So if you imagine, if you go and look down here, look, Alderney is to the left of the track. The runway is on the far right side from our perspective. Yeah, so just replying to Dave Dugdale, if you go to virtualflight.online on the web and go and look on in the side, it says transmitter. It'll give you the instructions in there. The buttons in Little Nav Map changed a little while ago, so you get the option now to show the sim aircraft or the AI aircraft individually of the online player aircraft, or independently I should say. Okay, so let's have a quick look on Little Nav Map, and if we measure distance, we got 28 miles to run to Alderney. So it shouldn't take too long. Doing about just over 150 knots. We are at 2,000 feet over the ocean. Let's go and correct barometric pressure. So okay, 1,900 feet. So obviously the weather has changed during the flight. So Dave's asking, is it John? Or I'll respond to most things really. So we should, if we go and look into the far distance, we start to see some land appearing. I think you can just see the headland where the airfield is, and there's the rest of the island. So we're going in exactly the right direction to hit it. Oh, the sim's frozen. Wait for it to unlock itself. Who knows what causes that? It's a complete and utter mystery. Power management is switched off for Bluetooth. Bluetooth is actually disabled. All of the USB devices have had their power management disabled, so it's nothing to do with that. I tend to think it's server related actually. Oh, someone has just spawned in alongside me. That'll be the multiplayer aircraft where the sim paused. They would have been coming alongside me. So it may even have been the multiplayer servers caused that with the spawn in of an aircraft. So let's sit up and have a look. It's another Caribou. If we look on Little Nav Map, we can figure out who it is if they're transmitting. It's VFL. Oh no, VFL 406 is the small aircraft, not the Caribou. This one is in the military colours, which I haven't even looked at yet. Okay, where are we on terms of the track? We're drifting off slightly, so we can see the island now though, which helps enormously. So we're just turning gently back across the track. So when we get to Alderney, we are going to come in runway 08. So that'll be into the wind. Weather on the ground is 050 degrees, 18 knots. It's not too bad. I'm just reading the live stream comments. I have never actually gone up here and clicked on AI Flight Assistant. I don't know what it does. So I imagine auto trim, anti-stall, AI piloting, whatever that does. Never tried it. Presumably you just tell it where you want to go and it will take you there. But I know it's there, and I know for people who hate that this doesn't have an autopilot, it would help them, but I actually like the challenge of this not having an autopilot. It makes it more fun in my opinion. So you can see there's a couple of boats. Should we go and do a bit of a detour to go and see the boats? Go and past them on the way in. So they are part of the scenery, if you have it, for Alderney. So this is the boundless scenery, I think. So there's a tanker out here and a cruise ship at the moment. We'll do a little bit of a detour to go and see them, because we can see the island now. We don't need radio navigation to get there. But it's quite nice to know, isn't it, that we concentrated a lot on the way out, and it would have taken us directly over the airfield, which is what we were looking to do. Obviously we're now going to go to the left of the radio track, or the radial I should say. So that needle will end up going to the right in the nav radio. We'll go and overfly Alderney before we come into the airfield, I guess. So Gary Bath is saying, yeah, this would be an excellent plane to use with your controls. So if you've not seen your controls, it allows two people with the same aircraft in the simulator to act as pilot and co-pilot. So it replicates what each person is doing within the cockpit of each plane, so you can work together. That would really help a lot with this aeroplane, to be honest. Xavier St. Cloud is saying, hello Jonathan, what's your favourite plane in real life and in the game? Oh, I don't know. I like most planes. So you can see we're getting closer to... As I said, the radial would slide to the right, and it has done so. There's a tanker out here. Cruise ship. So we're going to turn and head for the airfield. Oh my word, where did all these aeroplanes come from? Okay, so we know coming into Alderney that the rocks off to the the western end, we're coming in from the north, the rocks on the right hand side of the island are a good indicator to turn around for the approach. So we're going to go and turn to turn around those rocks. So Gary's saying incidentally happy early birthday. Still flying at a ripe young age of 76. There's a group I fly with called My Air, worth looking up on the internet. They're all similar age to you, so they've got a lot of experience with the various different simulators over the years, and they fly using kind of a relaxed air traffic control, where a couple of them nominate as air traffic controllers each day. When they fly Tuesdays and Thursdays in the week on an evening. In the UK, that is. Okay, so let's come off the throttles now. So boost pumps can go to norm. Whoa, we've overshot. Gear can come down. We'll see if we can stop before the taxiway on the way into Alderney, shall we? So we've got quite a strong crosswind here, but it shouldn't be a problem for us at all. This is a very easy aeroplane to fly, he says, as the left wing starts to drop. Whoa, it's floating. Really, really is floating. Bit of a hard landing, but it's fine. Don't need to reverse pitch even. We've stopped very quickly. And we trundle in. We'll just get past the fence. Let's have a look. Yeah, it gets past the fence, that's fine. We won't be able to park in front of the building though. Maybe park over on the grass. Okay, so mixtures back to nothing, which will kill the engines. Propeller condition back. You're seeing aeroplanes floating because they're on stock scenery. The replacement for Alderney is much more accurate and has the correct altitudes for the ground, for example. So that's why you're seeing that. So just go and turn everything off around the plane. So there's not much to turn off, to be honest. And that's it. Oh, we got the forgot the lights. Should have done that before the power, but anyway. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to go and get on with some chores. So I'll see you later. Thank you for watching if you followed along. Hopefully you enjoyed that. And as I said, it's kind of 70% the finished article, this aircraft. I think it's really good though. It's only £14 I think in the marketplace. So anyway, I'll see you again soon. Take care.